They called me Princess when I was a child, a name laced with love, but on my 30th birthday, that name became a weapon. "You're too old to freeload," my father said that night. I realized I had been used my whole life. Before starting this story, if you are listening from USA, please leave a comment with number 9, and if you are from another country, please leave the name of your lovely country. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel to listen to more stories. I still remember that autumn evening like it was yesterday. The sky was painted in shades of deep orange and soft purple as the sun sank behind the rows of old oak trees lining my small town's quiet streets. I pulled into the cracked driveway of the house I once called home, a place where I believed love and safety lived. But that night, the air inside felt heavy cold. It was my 30th birthday, a milestone I had hoped would mean something, but instead it became the night everything changed. I carried with me the only gift I had allowed myself, a small vanilla cake, bought from the corner bakery. The frosting was uneven, and the bright red letters spelling happy birthday were slightly crooked, a sign of the hurried teenager who'd wrapped it up for me. It was far from perfect, but it was mine. Stepping inside, the silence hit me first. No balloons, no warm greetings, only the familiar hum of the kitchen light casting harsh shadows on the peeling wallpaper. Dinner was already on the table: meatloaf, canned green beans, and boxed mashed potatoes. Nothing homemade, nothing special. I set the cake down quietly, the plastic bag rustling louder than I intended. My father sat at the head of the table, his face unreadable as he finally spoke, his voice cold and sharp. "You're late." No smile, no warmth, just a demand. I told him I had to finish work, my voice steady but drained. My mother didn't look up from her plate. The tension was thick, stretching across the room like a taut wire, as we ate in mechanical silence. My father suddenly slammed his fork down, making my mother flinch. His eyes bore into me with a chilling finality. "You're too old to freeload. Pack your things. You're leaving." The words didn't just land, they shattered. I glanced at my mother, desperate for some sign of kindness, but all I saw was cold avoidance. I quietly reminded them I had paid the bills: electricity, groceries, half the mortgage. My words floated in the air, met only by a bitter laugh. "Paying a few bills doesn't buy you a place here. Princess." The nickname cut deeper than any knife, a twisted echo of a childhood I once cherished. I swallowed the pain and pushed my plate away. No tears, no pleas, just a sharp nod. Understood. Their eyes searched for a reaction, something to justify their cruelty. But I gave none. I gathered my coat, paused by the counter where the lonely cake sat, and climbed the stairs without looking back. Behind the closed bedroom door, I finally let the weight of it all press down. The house that should have been my sanctuary had never truly been mine. I was done hoping, done fixing what was broken. The suitcase I'd been too afraid to finish packing for weeks sat open on my bed. It was time to leave not just the house, but the life they thought I owed them. For years, I carried a heavy burden no one ever saw. I was the invisible thread holding our fragile family together, stitching the cracks they ignored. From the outside, it may have looked like ordinary life, but behind closed doors, I was the one paying bills, fixing problems, and mending wounds no one else would acknowledge. I remember the cold winter when my father broke a tooth during one of his drinking binges. He couldn't afford the surgery with the mortgage notices piling up on the kitchen counter. Quietly, I emptied my savings, the fund I had carefully built for my own future, and paid for the dental work. No thanks, no gratitude, just a grunt when he stumbled back from the dentist, cursing and drooling. Then there was the night my mother called, stranded on a deserted highway with bald tires after a reckless winter storm. I skipped work to buy her a new set, paid for the tow truck, and helped her get home safely. She patted my hand once and said, "You're a good girl." Before handing me the repair bill, she expected me to cover too. Spring brought a leaky roof, and while rain poured down, I was the one up on the ladder hammering shingles. My father sat inside with a beer, grumbling about contractors, while his daughter saved the house from falling apart. None of it mattered. None of it earned me a seat at their table that night. I learned the hard way that love doesn't always mean sacrifice is seen or valued. It was invisible labor, endless giving with nothing returned, every unpaid bill, every missed vacation, every uncelebrated birthday was a thread in the web of neglect and exploitation they wove around me. That silent suffering hardened into something colder, a resolve I never thought I'd need. I wasn't just tired anymore. I was done letting their indifference define me. And that night, the night I was told to leave, I finally understood the truth I had been used, and now it was time to stop being their safety net. That night, after the cold dismissal at the dinner table, I sat alone in my dimly lit bedroom, the weight of years of sacrifice pressing down harder than ever. The silence wasn't peaceful, it was suffocating. I realized I had been the invisible backbone of their world, and now they wanted me gone without so much as a thank you. Something inside me snapped. This wasn't just about leaving anymore. It was about reclaiming my life. With trembling hands, I powered on my laptop, the screen casting a pale glow across the cluttered desk. My fingers moved with a determination I hadn't known I possessed. First, I logged into the utilities portal. The electric bill, water, gas, each account bore my name, proof of my years of unseen labor. One by one, I canceled autopay, removed payment methods, and severed the financial ties that had bound me to a family that didn't see me. Next came the internet service, cable subscription, and cell phone plan services they took for granted, all paid with money from my paycheck. I deleted their devices from my insurance policies too, recalling how sweetly my mother once praised my money smarts, all the while expecting me to cover their costs. The satisfaction in pressing each cancel button was grim, but deeply necessary. Every click was a step toward freedom. I paused briefly over the joint bank account my mother insisted we keep for emergencies. I had long suspected this was just another way to keep me tethered. With a resolute breath, I transferred my funds to a private account I had quietly set up months earlier. Then, I froze the emergency savings, knowing it would take them weeks to untangle the paperwork. By then, I would be long gone. As the night deepened, I sat back, exhausted but victorious. This was not revenge, it was survival. They had asked me to leave, but I was making sure they would understand what it meant to lose the daughter who had kept their fragile world from crumbling. The house buzzed faintly in the background, but soon the lights would flicker and fade, just like the illusions of love I once held dear. Tonight, I didn't just pack a suitcase, I packed up my spirit, my dignity, and my refusal to be a ghost in my own life any longer. The morning after I severed every financial tie, my phone erupted with notifications, messages from my parents, relatives, even neighbors flooded in each one a twisted blend of sorrow, anger, and accusation. My mother's voice trembled in desperate voicemails, pleading for reconciliation, painting a picture of a sick father and a family torn apart by misunderstanding. But behind the tears, I sensed manipulation, a calculated performance meant to pull me back under their control. Then came the posts on social media. My father's bitter words spread like wildfire across the local Facebook groups. "Some daughters are raised to be grateful," he wrote, "but others become snakes. After all we sacrificed, she abandoned us." The comments poured in, some offering sympathy, many more casting judgment. I read cruel labels like ungrateful brat and family traitor, the sting of each one sharper than any slap. But the community wasn't blind. Friends and acquaintances I hadn't spoken to in years began sharing stories that contradicted my parents' narrative. A neighbor recalled seeing me shovel their driveway alone during bitter winters while my father watched from the porch. An old teacher mentioned how I had stayed late after school to help my mother when she was ill. The truth started to surface, breaking through the web of lies spun to isolate me. My cousin Nora stood by my side through it all, calm yet fierce. She reminded me, "They're writing your story for you. Are you going to let them control how people see you?" Her words settled deep inside, stealing my resolve. Despite their attempts to paint me as the villain, I refused to fall into the trap of guilt. This wasn't just a family feud, it was a public war for my reputation and my truth. And for once, I wasn't fighting alone. As the days passed, the backlash intensified. My parents' accusations grew desperate, shifting from sorrowful pleas to veiled threats. But the tide had begun to turn. The town's whispers softened, replaced by nods of understanding and quiet support. Slowly, the daughter they tried to erase was reclaiming her name in the eyes of the world. Through the storm of judgment and betrayal, I realized something vital. Strength comes not from hiding, but from standing tall in your truth even when the world tries to tear you down. In the quiet hours that followed the storm of accusations, I turned inward, knowing that words alone wouldn't be enough to reclaim my story. It was time to gather the truth, the cold, undeniable proof of years spent holding a family together with invisible hands. I pulled out the folder I had been secretly maintaining for years. Inside were meticulously organized receipts, bank statements, screenshots of payments, and emails, each a silent testament to my sacrifices. Every utility bill I had paid, every mortgage check I had sent, every repair expense I had covered was documented in sharp clarity. The paper trail was long and unbroken. Hours passed as I scanned documents, double-checking dates and amounts. Each page reminded me of sleepless nights at work, missed celebrations, and the quiet weight of responsibility that no one else seemed to notice. But now, those sacrifices transformed from invisible burdens into weapons of undeniable truth. My laptop's soft glow illuminated the room as I carefully compiled everything into a digital archive. I crafted a clear timeline, outlining the years of financial support I had provided, the repairs funded without gratitude, and the emotional labor I had endured in silence. It wasn't a story fueled by anger, it was a clinical presentation of facts, a fortress built from honesty and proof. Nora peeked in quietly, her voice low and steady. "Are you going to share this?" she asked. I shook my head gently. "Not yet. Let them keep talking. Let the cracks in their story widen." Patience had become my ally. The truth was patient and powerful, and I intended to let it speak at the right moment. As I closed the laptop for the night, a sense of calm settled over me. I wasn't just preparing to fight, I was preparing to be heard, and this time, my voice would be backed by the undeniable weight of truth. Days later, the tension that had been simmering beneath the surface erupted into something undeniable, a lawsuit. The letter arrived early one morning, its official seal mocking in its formality. My father was accusing me of theft, emotional elder abuse, and financial abandonment. The charges were not only baseless, they were cruel attempts to silence me and discredit everything I had done. Sitting at my kitchen table, I unfolded the thick packet of legal papers with a steady hand. The words stung, but the shock had worn off. I was ready. Nora sat beside me, her presence a quiet reminder that I was not alone in this fight. We made the call to a legal aid office in Columbus that afternoon, explaining every detail calmly and thoroughly. The paralegal on the other end listened with care, asking thoughtful questions. "You have a strong case," she said. "And honestly, from what you've described, it sounds like you could file counterclaims for exploitation and financial abuse." Her words planted a seed of hope that had been buried under years of doubt and silence. Over the next few days, we worked together to prepare a response. I gathered the evidence I had compiled receipts, bank statements, emails, and documented every sacrifice and payment I had made. This was not just about defending myself, it was about standing up against a system that had allowed me to be taken for granted for so long. When my parents heard of the legal support I had secured, their calls and messages turned from sorrowful to threatening. My father's final text was cold and venomous. "You think you won?" Family always has the last word. I stared at the screen, feeling the familiar ache of betrayal, but this time, I didn't waver. I wasn't apologizing anymore. This was my battle, and I was ready to fight not just for myself, but for the respect and dignity I had long been denied. Slowly but surely, the tide began to turn. The town that once whispered behind closed doors now started to speak openly. Stories I thought were buried deep surfaced one by one, shared quietly at first, then with growing confidence. Neighbors who had once pretended not to notice began to nod knowingly as I passed by. An elderly woman from down the street stopped me one afternoon, her eyes soft but firm. We all knew. "Dear," she whispered, "we just didn't know how to say it." That small admission felt like a lifeline. At the autumn festival, where the air was thick with the scent of caramel apples and hay, I felt eyes on me, some filled with judgment, others with sympathy. My old elementary school teacher gave me a gentle nod, a silent acknowledgement of the invisible battles I had fought. Even strangers offered quiet words of support. One of my mother's longtime church friends approached me, her hand resting gently on my shoulder. "You deserved better." "Sweetheart," she said softly. "We were just too afraid to speak up." The community's growing awareness was both comforting and bittersweet. Their silence had allowed the wounds to fester for so long. But now their voices added weight to my truth. The support wasn't loud or dramatic, it was steady, like a gentle current pulling me toward healing. Yet, despite the newfound understanding, the scars remained. The betrayal ran deep, and forgiveness was not easy. But standing amidst the crowd, feeling seen for the first time in years, I realized something profound. I no longer needed their approval to define my worth. With Nora by my side, I embraced this turning point not as an end, but as the beginning of reclaiming my life. The town's whispers had changed from gossip to empathy, and in that shift, I found the strength to keep moving forward. The first few weeks after the storm were a blur of small, steady steps towards something I hadn't allowed myself to imagine for years, a new beginning. Nora's apartment became my sanctuary, a space where I could breathe without the weight of expectation pressing down on me. The worn kitchen table, chipped coffee mugs, and second-hand furniture weren't much, but they were mine, and that was everything. I found a small rental downtown, an aging brick building with creaky floors and drafty windows. It wasn't perfect, but it was a fresh start, a blank canvas. Signing the lease felt like a quiet rebellion against the past, a declaration that I was finally choosing myself. Each day was filled with ordinary tasks that felt extraordinary: folding laundry, cooking dinner, walking to the corner store without looking over my shoulder. These simple moments stitched together a life rebuilt on my own terms. I bought second-hand furniture piece by piece, a faded couch here, a wobbly kitchen table there, painting the walls a soft blue, the color of open skies and calm mornings. At night, I would sit by the single living room window, watching the town's lights blink on and off like distant stars. The silence no longer felt empty. It felt earned. It was a quiet victory born of pain and resilience. One afternoon, while unpacking the last box, I found the plastic cake topper from that birthday that had shattered everything. The cheap, bent little decoration held no bitterness anymore. It was proof not of loss, but of survival. I placed it carefully on a shelf above my desk, a private trophy honoring the girl who refused to be broken. Life wasn't perfect, and the wounds still lingered, but I was learning to live with them, to grow beyond them. Family wasn't just about blood, it was about respect, kindness, and choosing who you let in. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. Nora raised her chipped mug to me one quiet evening. "To new beginnings," she said softly. "To finally choosing myself," I replied, smiling for the first time in what felt like forever. As the days settled into a new rhythm, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought me here, the pain, the betrayal, the silence. They no longer defined me. Instead, they became the backdrop against which I rebuilt my life, stronger and clearer than before. I understood now that family isn't simply about shared blood or history. It's about who shows up, who respects you, and who treats you like you matter. That realization was both freeing and bittersweet. I had spent so many years trying to fit into a mold that was never meant for me, seeking approval from people who never truly cared. The plastic cake topper, once a symbol of a broken birthday, had transformed into a quiet testament of survival. It reminded me daily that I was enough, that I had worth beyond their cruelty. I no longer carried the burden of their judgment or the weight of their expectations. Instead, I carried a sense of peace, hard-won but real, I had learned to choose myself, to set boundaries, and to walk away from those who would not honor me. Sometimes, I still felt the ache of what was lost, but it was softened by the strength I had found. I was no longer a victim, but a survivor ready to face whatever came next with courage and grace. And so, in the quiet of my new home, with city lights twinkling beyond the window, I whispered to myself the words I had waited a lifetime to believe: I am enough. Sometimes, walking away from those who raised you is the only way to become who you were meant to be. This story reminds us that true strength often comes from choosing ourselves, setting boundaries, and walking away from those who fail to value and respect us. Family is not solely defined by blood, but by kindness, trust, and the love we give and receive. Sometimes, growth requires painful decisions, but it opens the door to healing, freedom, and self-respect. This story is a work of fiction created for educational and entertainment purposes only. It is not intended to attack or defame any individual, family, or organization. Any resemblance to real persons or events is purely coincidental. If this story moved you or sparked a thought, please let us know by commenting below. Your likes, shares, and subscriptions help us create more stories that inspire and entertain. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Thank you for watching and being part of our community.